I want to tell you two stories which I think you'll find interesting and be able to relate to. A few years ago I stopped at some traffic lights. In the UK we have these things called yellow box junctions, and you are not allowed to stop on them. The traffic lights went green, but I could not move forward because the traffic on the other side of the yellow box had not moved. All of a sudden, the guy behind me is furiously honking his horn at me. So I turned around and made a rude gesture. Next thing I know, he gets out of the car and attacks me. I'm no tough guy, but thanks to 5 years of jiu-jitsu, I'm used to being attacked and managed to get the better of the guy. But later that day I get a knock at the door and I'm arrested for assault. I ended up in court and serving time in prison. Now the second story. My family and I were on holiday. My kids were doing an activity called aerial adventure, which involved walking across rope bridges at staggering heights, and then sliding down a zip wire at tremendous speed. But then both wires broke and my kids came crashing down, hitting not the water but the ground. Now what is interesting about these stories is that they are only partly true. The true part of the road rage story ended here. I didn't even make a rude gesture. And the true part of the zip wire story was that my kids did slide down a zip wire. So where did the rest of the story come from? Well, it came from my imagination at the time of the event. They were scenarios that I played out in my head, almost like I was watching them on TV. They are what I call anxiety daydreams. Something mildly anxiety-provoking happens and triggers catastrophic images or thoughts in your head, that your brain turns into a TV drama. So you might be thinking that I have an anxiety disorder. Intrusive images of something terrible happening to your kids fits very well with OCD, and so does thoughts about being arrested. And catastrophising is common with generalized anxiety disorder. But I don't have an anxiety disorder. Yes, I had some anxiety problems in the past, but I learned how to overcome these a long time ago. So, why do I get these anxiety daydreams, and what can you do if your mind is inventing these catastrophic dramas? So you might be surprised to learn that to some extent most people get these anxiety daydreams. What varies is how frequently we get them, how long they last, how intense they are, and the level of anxiety that they bring. You see, our mind has to make thousands of decisions every day. And to make a decision, it has to weigh up the pros and cons of everything we do, based on all our knowledge and experience of the world to date. Our mind is designed to protect us and our offspring, so it's not surprising that when my children wanted to walk across a wobbly rope bridge, 50 metres off the ground, that my mind starts to show me some potential dangers. But why am I, and maybe you, more prone to these anxiety daydreams than others? I'm going to explain that by looking at nature. See this flock of seagulls? They may look all the same, but look at what each one is doing. This one is preening. This one is chilling, and these are keeping watch. But keep an eye on this one. He is the first one to take off, and all the others follow. However, he looks smaller and younger than the others, so is unlikely to be the leader. This seagull has been spooked before the rest of the flock, indicating he is more sensitive than the others. Let's play with this and imagine what is going through his mind. A bird flies past our little seagull. He thinks, what just flew past? Was it a hawk? Then he visualizes a hawk catching one of the seagulls. This scary anxiety daydream is enough to make him take off, and all the others follow. If he was right about the hawk, then he has saved the flock, but if he was wrong, then he has spoilt their chill-out time in the sun. Of course, this is purely speculative, but in all species there are some individuals that are much more alert to danger than others. Anxious birds like our little seagull are necessary to keep the flock safe. If they were all as chilled as Sleepy Sid here, the flock would not last long. And it's no different in humans. Some of us are more tuned to danger than others. Some of us will see the catastrophic scenarios in our head more than others. But these catastrophic daydreams can be very anxiety-provoking and may even cause physical symptoms. For example, when I thought about the fight with the angry driver, my stomach tightened a little, as my body prepared for the fight that I was imagining. But despite getting these anxiety daydreams, I actually feel very little anxiety. And any physical symptoms last only seconds. That's because I have learned how to deal with them. I have learned to accept them. Years ago, if I'd seen images of my kids falling from a height, I would have probably done something to prevent it happening. Maybe tell my kids that they can't do the zip wire. Or maybe ask the staff to demonstrate their safety record, or how they test the wires are strong enough. But instead I did none of these things. Although my head was filled with catastrophic images, As I watched my kids stood on the platform 50 metres up, I did nothing other than film them. My kids loved it, and I'm glad I didn't stop them, as they will have fond memories of that day. And if I did give in to my daydreams and stop them having fun, I risk passing on my own anxieties to them. This act of acceptance and not acting on these awful daydreams has meant that the logical part of my brain is able to overrule the part that sends these catastrophic scenarios. And, as a result, any anxiety they bring is mild and short-lasting. I've also learned to laugh at my daydreams. The road rage daydream is particularly laughable. How did I get from someone sounding the horn to me being in prison? It's just daft. Let me know about some of your more ridiculous daydreams in the comments below. If we can all learn to laugh at our daydreams, it will help them lose their power. So finally, here are 4 tips to deal with anxiety daydreams. 1. Accept, don't try to stop them. 2. Don't overanalyze them. Remember, your brain makes thousands of decisions per day, so it's just throwing up different scenarios. It lets you decide which ones are likely to happen. 3. Don't change your behaviours due to a ridiculous daydream that is highly unlikely to come true. 4. Learn to laugh at the more ridiculous daydreams. They can actually be quite funny. These daydreams are not all bad though. Sometimes they can be useful. Due to the road rage daydream, I didn't make a rude gesture to the guy honking his horn at me. And while I probably would not have ended up in prison, I may have avoided a few cuts and bruises if he had taken exception to it. So daydreams have their uses, but you just need to make sure your resultant actions are based on logic and not anxiety. And if that's something you struggle to do, use this CBT thought challenging tool that I teach in this video. Take care now.